So, yes, good morning, everybody. I see we have already 38 people online, and I'm so happy that we are in a room again. Good morning also to the people here in the room. After 26 months is the first time that we can meet physically again in the Animal Welfare Intergroup, so that's really great. And we have a very important topic today at the agenda. So this intergroup session will really focus on the common agricultural policy and the national strategic plans and how they can be used to improve animal welfare standards. And what I've heard already, I think we have quite big difference there what the member states are proposing. So the objective today is to learn how far the common agricultural policy can go to protect animal welfare and what the member states can do to make full use of this opportunity. So therefore, today we are joined by Monsieur Pierre Bascou, Deputy Director General for Sustainability in DG Agri from the European Commission. And so good morning, and he's there online. And with us today on my left, I'm very happy also to see him, is Mr. Andreas Manz. He's Policy Coordinator for Paws, and he went to all the strategic plans, so he did really a great work by analyzing the aspects of animal welfare there. So we will first listen to both presentations and then open the floor as usual for question and answer. And as usual, I would like to highlight some practical aspects that you all know already. So it is, the meeting this morning is live stream on Interaxio. The meeting will be recorded and the video recording and presentation will be uploaded to the Intergroup website afterwards. Given the short time at disposal, I would also like to ask all our colleagues to be please brief with the question and statements. So we come to the first presentation. I will now give the floor to Mr. Pierre Bascou, who is there already remotely. Monsieur Bascou, the floor is yours. Bienvenue. Welcome.
Merci, Madame. Good morning, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank you for the invitation to talk about the new CAP and the National Strategic Plan and the animal welfare consideration. But I would like also to apologize, I think, for not being able to be with you, physically in this first meeting that takes place physically. But due to the current workload, it was really impossible for me to be in Strasbourg today. So I would like to start, I think, my introduction, I think, by putting this overall discussion in the broader picture. Europe agriculture has really changed dramatically, I think, in the last 60 years, and farmers have, in many cases, become bigger with fewer people raising more animals in much less time. And this growth in animal production has generally taken place in intensive systems with relatively little contribution from small-scale farmers. And this production and trade growth had, in many instances, unavoidable consequences for animals: high stocking densities, cage environment, extreme confinement, long-term transport. And EU citizens now have become, more and more aware of farm animals' living conditions, and they are demanding, positive change. And as you know, in 2018, animal welfare came, by this online consultation on the future of Europe as one of the top 10 topics for which citizens are proud, I think, to belong to the EU. Recently, also, I think we and the European Citizen Initiative, and the cage age, I think, that ask, I think, to ban, I think, cages for an array of animal species, and I think we are more than 1.4, if I'm not mistaken, signature across the EU. So clearly, I think there's a strong message from society and from consumers, I think, for changes in animal welfare condition, I think, for livestock farms. And the Commission that took office at the end of 2019 put a much greater focus on sustainability as reflected in the Green Deal and the Farm to Fork strategy. And both strategies aim at ensuring that our food system, and to start with, our agriculture, become much more sustainable and more compatible with today's values and demand, including, and this is one of our, flagship, areas of work, I think, on animal welfare. And this is why, to come to the CAP, under the new Common Agricultural Policy, animal welfare has been significantly strengthened. It is now part of the 9 specific objectives that member states will have to address in the strategic plan, and the Commission will be demanding, I would say very demanding, as regards animal welfare standards in the national strategic plan. So we already started to, in our recommendation that were issued at the end of 2020, and most recommendation to member states in order to prepare the national strategic plan, and most of these recommendations contained recommendation on the need to improve animal welfare. And now I think we are finalized, I think, the first step of assessment of the strategic plan, which have been proposed by member states, and in particular by the 19 member states, I think, that respected, I think, the deadline. It is important to mention that in the strategic plan, animal welfare will be promoted mainly through 4 what I would call mechanisms or instruments. The first one is conditionality, that exists, I think, already for quite a while. Conditionality that ensure that protection rules that exist in different directives are properly respected by beneficiaries of CAP support. It will be promoted through financial incentives in the first pillar, what we call the first pillar of the CAP, through eco scheme. And I think this eco scheme will represent at least 25% of the overall envelope for direct payment, and that will be allocated to payment for environment, climate, and animal welfare. There will be also financial incentives in the second pillar. This is more traditional instruments, I think, for that. And support for animal welfare will be embedded in the minimum spending of at least 35% of the second pillar for environment, climate, and animal welfare. And to be noted that under both eco scheme in the first pillar and second pillar instruments, like animal welfare commitment or investment or support for investment for animal welfare objectives, the financial incentive will be provided for farm practices that go beyond the baseline of legal requirement. And it is important to note also that such management commitment and investment intervention can be relevant for providing support during transitional period, in case I think we introduce new legal requirements. And as you know, the Commission is working on a new animal welfare legislation that will be most likely proposed, I think, next year. There will be the possibility to use the CAP eco scheme in the first pillar and second pillar instruments to help and support farmers in introducing, I think, this legal requirement for a period of up to 2 years, I think, and to receive financial incentive for that. The fourth instrument I would like to mention, which is very important, is all the animal welfare support, which is embedded in what we call knowledge transfer via farm advisory services, but also support for innovation and cooperation. So last week, to come, I think, to the strategic plan. Last week, the Commission sent observation letters to the 9 member states that submitted a proposal, in time by the end of last year or beginning of this year. And for your information, we are in the final stages of assessment of the remaining 9 draft strategic plan. As already announced, I think it is the Commission intention to publish the observation letters after having given, I think, the member state the opportunity to comment on them, and I think this will be done, I think, within the next, 3 weeks. As for animal welfare, I think precisely, I think the good news is that all member states recognize, I think, the importance of animal welfare in the plans, although it has to be underlined, many member states need to provide clarity on the designed, I think, intervention. The majority of member states have provided in the plan the estimated target, which is a target that measures the share of livestock units which are covered by action to improve animal welfare. And this target, I think, ranges between around 20 to 50% of all animals, I think, in a country. We find, I think, some targets which are almost at 90%, some a bit lower, but overall, I think the majority of them are in this range between 20 and 50%. 9 member states have opted for animal welfare intervention under the eco scheme, so under the first pillar, with a budget estimate of 1.5 billion euro. And here I'm only talking about the 19 member states that submitted the plan, towards the end of last year or beginning of this year. So for these 19 member states, we have 1.5 billion to support animal welfare under the first pillar, under the eco scheme. Under the second pillar, 16 member states, so the vast majority of them, 16 out of 19, are providing welfare interventions under the environment, climate, and other management committee, so which is quite significant. All member states have embedded under the on-farm, investment support, the support to upgrade, I think, the holdings, including improvement needed for animal welfare. So something also very positive. A few member states also foresee the need to support quality schemes where welfare rules are also integrated. And one member state, so 1 out of 19, envisage also a specific support to farmers for participation in animal welfare labeling scheme. So in total, this environment, climate, and other commitment, the investment support, I think this quality scheme and this welfare labeling scheme, all these elements put together, I think have a budget allocation of around 2.8 billion euro for the whole programming period. So this is more or less equivalent to what exists currently under the second pillar. But when we will have integrated all the member states and when we will have covered all the measures that have an impact on animal welfare, and here I would like to mention organic farming, we expect, I think, to see a significant increase in the budget allocated to support for animal welfare under the second pillar. I would like to mention also that the majority of the animal welfare interventions in the second pillar are targeted for reducing the stocking density of bovines and pig. However, I think some of the proposed commitments have been rather modest, and the added value for, I would say, the direct impact on animal welfare is still, I think, rather uncertain. To be noted also that for some member states, clearly in the description of the animal welfare measures, support, I think, through the transition to cage-free farming system, and in particular for laying hen, I think is also present. So this is, I think, very positive. And again, I think we shouldn't forget that the implementation of higher animal welfare standards is expected also, I think, from the increase in the organic sector, increase that we see in all member states to a different extent, but I think we see in the draft strategic plan submitted to us a very significant increase in the support, either conversion or maintenance of organic farming. So in our assessment of the draft strategic plan, I think we have sent observation letters, I think, to these 19 member states. We have requested, I think, some member states first, I think, to better describe how the proposed action go beyond standard practices and how they will concretely lead to improved animal welfare. We have also asked some of these member states, I think, to better integrate, actions improving the welfare of pigs, in particular to address, I think, the tail docking practices, which is a major problem, I think, in some countries. We have also encouraged some member states to promote, I think, the keeping of laying hens, calves and sows, in non-confined housing system in order to facilitate once again the transition toward the response to this European Citizen Initiative to end the cage age. So almost, I would say, all observation letters, I think, contain requests for clarification, for enhancing the level of ambition, or to substantiate a bit more, I think, the support, I think, for animal welfare. So to conclude, I think we expect this strategic plan in the future from next year onwards, to increase significantly, I think, the level of support to farmers for improving the animal welfare condition, I think, on the farm. In addition, I would like to underline that within the framework of the Farm to Fork strategy, the Commission is about to review the EU animal welfare legislation, the existing marketing standards, which have, I would say, a direct to indirect impact on animal welfare. And I think also we are looking at options for animal welfare labeling in order to improve, I think, the transfer along the food chain of the value added that product gain through welfare-friendly practices. And my very last word, I think, for this introduction will be also to stress that, in my view, I think the switch to more sustainable farming system with increased animal welfare standard will also be a very important opportunity to improve the image of the livestock sector and to raise the confidence among the public, in the farmers' work, both internally but also at global level internationally. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Many thanks to you, Monsieur Bascou, for this presentation, this very, big approach that you made us there, also making reference to legislative files to come up and that are also related to animal welfare. So I tried to take note, but it went quite quickly with all the different elements. But we saw that in the CAP there are different entrances, as you know, to foster animal welfare. And also we have already an overview here, a short overview that you gave us about the observation letters. So, but I will give the floor now immediately without losing more time to Mr. Andreas Manz for his presentation and his analysis on animal welfare on the strategic plans. Andreas, du hast das Wort.
Thank you very much. I will wait. Okay, I will tell you when the slides have to be pushed forward. So thank you very much for the invitation. Right now is a perfect moment to talk about the national strategic plans. It's because Mr. Bascou mentioned already, the Commission has sent the observation letters to the member states, at least to them who handed them in time. And this means we are entering the last phase in which changes to the plans are possible. I mean, from outside of the member states. It's super important. I would like to give you, in 10 minutes now, a short overview about the animal welfare measures in the member states, give a comment on the process and the new delivery model, have a closer look at one specific example, I chose Austria for it, and give my assessment to the question, is it good? And what should be done now? Next slide, please. So let's take a look at the European animal welfare map. Yeah, you can see there, you maybe here in the room, you have to check the slides afterwards. You can see there 3 different kinds of countries who offer animal welfare measures with rural development measures and maybe also eco schemes. We have also countries which are only offering eco schemes, and we have countries who are doing none of them. This map is already relatively colorful, and yes, in comparison to the last CAP period, we have additional countries who are now also supporting animal welfare, with Poland, Portugal, and France. But please don't be fooled. The map does not give an overview about the quantity or the quality of the animal welfare measures. 3 countries of them, one of the biggest, Spain, Italy, and Germany, for instance, only offering animal welfare measures in certain regions. And Lithuania, Poland, and Portugal, they are only offering measures via the eco scheme. Next slide, please. Because it could be of interest for you, I put together an overview about the different supported animals by the member states. So, and here there is no division between rural development measures or other forms of interventions like eco schemes, just what is happening. I forgot here to put on rabbits. My apologies to Spain. This is a country who also gives money for animal welfare measures in this sector. So just to give you an overview, what kind of measures are here? The eco schemes are most often money which is given for animals on pasture. The EU Commission published already December last year an overview of possible measures, and the member states were invited to use them. Rural development measures are similar, like we have it in the last year already. It's most often management commitments with more space or less animals on the pasture itself, or what also is given other things for instance, investment subsidies. Some member states could agree that they support animal welfare as well. I would like to highlight one kind of animal welfare measure which is completely new, and this is done by Luxembourg. They said, we want to achieve higher self-sufficiency in feed and therefore want to have less animals. So it's the only country I could find where they said, we don't want to be dependent on imported feed, so have less animals, and they support it. France has a similar measure, but not supporting the reduction of animals, but just having more farms as well. Let me just give you a short remark on conditionality, because it was mentioned. For me, as an animal welfare person, I don't see this as an animal welfare measure whatsoever. Cross-compliance, which was earlier, was only invented to ensure that we have coupled payments in the future, and when it became the conditionality, the most important measure, identification and registration of cattle, so with the earmarks, was taken out. So this measure will not be helpful whatsoever, at least from my point of view. Let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, short comments on the process and the new delivery model. After checking all the national strategic plans, I have to say, I like it very much. Why? The countries have to do a self-evaluation with a SWOT analysis. They have to identify the resulting demands, and they have to come up with an intervention logic. This all is really, really good, because it can show different measures which are more coherent, which are more aligned. And this is fantastic if the member state is willing. And this, unfortunately, is the most important part of the sentence, because I checked them and I want to give you my personal highlights of the SWOT analysis. Denmark said, when it came to animal welfare measures, we have no weaknesses detected. So I congratulate Denmark to this. I, as an animal welfare person, would disagree. Other member states were very honest. They said really clearly, our legislation is not good enough. Our farmers do not earn enough money with this. We have too many pigs which were tail-docked. We have too many broilers in cages, not broilers, laying hens, of course. And this is amazing. Of course, you need to come up with the resulting demands and intervention logic, but this is a very important start. So other member states use this coherent approach to say, for instance, Dutch, we see that legal requirements are more important and they can achieve more. So it's not important to support animal welfare measures. They also refer to private label schemes or to general investment support. So as an animal welfare person, I'm of course super unhappy to see if the member state says, I don't need the support. But the coherent and comprehensive approach is the right one. But the question is it coherent with farm to fork? And we all know the CAP is done on an old logic by Commissioner Hogan itself. And I have to see that this is really critical here. And therefore, it is super important that we now take a look at the role of the European Commission. Hogan said, if I remember correctly, no, the member states will not have free hand. They will have to present a plan, and then the Commission will come up and will check it properly, and then will say, is it good enough? Let's go forward and give you one example how Austria did it to get a little bit better understanding how it went for. So Austria said, yes, we have the need to improve animal welfare, and we prioritize it as high. And they came up with certain interventions. So they say, for instance, we use the eco scheme, which means put animals on pasture for 120 days. Just to have a little bit of better understanding, there is a coupled support for animals in Austria, where farmers get also money for bringing animals on the so-called on the Alps for 60 days already. So this is a perfect add-on to do it. This has pros and cons. I'm happy that animals are longer on pasture, but I'm failing to see how many additional farmers are doing it. It's more or less supporting something which is there. And due to the fact that it can be more important, it will help to stay with the level on farmers who are doing that. And this needs to be taken into account. They have better housing options for pigs and bovine, which is good, but also here, what measures are exactly in the plan? For instance, they give more space to the animals and give straw on it. If you have a fully slaughtered stable, there's no chance to use it. So what you need is additional motivation to rebuild your stable or do a new one, which will most likely happen when you have a son taking over or something like this. Alone, it will not be good enough, to be honest. That's a little bit tricky. So let's go and ask let me tell you, is the whole program in Austria good from my point of view? And I have to say, kind of, because all the measures I can understand, and they have positive aspects, and I would like to highlight them, or I mentioned them very quickly. But is it enough to change something, to have animal welfare as part of the green transition? And here I have to say, no chance. This is, of course, because the Common Agriculture Policy is not the only tool in the box. But we have to be aware that CAP alone cannot do it. And therefore, it has to be aligned with all the other tools. And therefore, let me say it right here. I wanted to say it later, but we need the change of legal requirements. And we have it soon coming. Please use all your power to ensure that if animal welfare legislation is being revised, that better standards are the results of it. Next slide, please. Let's go to the end. Are the member states delivering on the new CAP objective? And I have to say, no. They try, but I'm an animal welfare guy. I cannot say it's good. I'm so sorry. It's not possible. They're trying. They have eco schemes, but some of them are only using it alone. Eco schemes alone are not sufficient. We have to do all the tools, and we have to use sufficient money resources which are not given right now. So therefore, let's go immediately forward. What do we need to do now? At first, I call to the Commission and say, what you are doing right now will be crucial. I checked some of your letters, and for instance, you wrote to France. What you are doing right now, France, is not nearly enough to achieve the goals you have to achieve in form of, for animal welfare. So what will now be the results? Is it that France will change one sentence and then that's it? And I can say, this can't be. This can't be. And therefore, I not only want to do the Commission their job properly, I also ask you, use your power, even if it's only soft power, yeah, to go to the member states. You're in your country. Tell them it needs to be done better, yeah? And tell the Commission, don't let the NSPs go through like nothing. Because this is what the former Commission did. Don't do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to you, Andreas, for your presentation, your analysis, and your very clear words, I must say. I mean, the call on you is very clear, and yeah, I would like, especially as there are some elections in Europe on Sunday, I think it's France. So I think it's a good moment also to treat, and as far as I understood, France is not delivering at all regarding animal welfare. So that's the feedback of the Commission, as far as I understood. You don't do anything regarding animal welfare with your new, so that's not the wording of the Commission, but that is the message I got there. So I think it's important to tweet and to say that, to say it very clearly. But we'll not take the conclusions before I hear your questions. Yeah, so does somebody, yes, there is a first question. Go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. I have been a little bit late, but I appreciate the assessment of European Commission. You said they do, I think they do a good job if they have so much to assess, to read, really to range and so on. So, yeah, we have information from Commission, we have your comparison. But my question is, you ask, you should check Commission, you should push Commission, fine. You should engage like politicians, we do it. But I think what decide, they are farmers, they are agriculturists. They should understand what is sustainable, what is safe, what is, like now we say, food security for the future. I think we shouldn't underestimate the agriculturists. They are able to do the progress because it's their interest. So just my question is for this, I think that we should, on the other hand, we should support agriculturists. We should support them. There is the CAP, yes, eco schemes. For example, in Czech Republic, there is not yet the assessment, but we know that now new government try to support more the animal welfare and to finance the changes, of course, with new legislation, because, for example, the ban of lion hens, so the ban of cages of lion hens, so that's why we should support them. So agriculturists, I think they are willing to change, but they need our support. It's maybe my comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andreas, you want to react? And also, Monsieur Bascou, si vous êtes encore là. So.
I absolutely agree with your assessment. But we need also to use then the right tools to support farmers. I worked for German Farmers Association my former life. I can tell you, if I want to find a farmer who has to implement all animal welfare measures in the stable, he just tells me, okay, give me legal requirements which are high enough, I will do it for 30 years. And as long as we are saying we don't need legal requirements or everything can be voluntary, this will not help farmers. We need strong requirements, otherwise they cannot plan. This is my reaction.
And I will also let Monsieur Bascou react. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. No, I think this is a very important element, because it is clear that I think the farmers, in the vast majority, are convinced about the need to improve the conditions of our animal, and are convinced that they need to, when it is necessary, improve the production systems. But in my view, they don't need enough. They don't need only changes in legislation. They need also to be supported. Farmers are economic agents. They need to balance, the three pillars of sustainability: the economic pillar, the environmental pillar, including animal welfare, and the social pillar. So they need to be supported financially, because very often livestock producers are very low. They have, one of the lowest, this is a sector which has one of the lowest, income level. And also they need to be accompanied, because you don't change, from production system to another, in one day. So they need to be accompanied and supported, by advisors, etc. So in my view, we shouldn't underestimate, the need, for financial support, of farmers, and we shouldn't also underestimate, the willingness, to change. We see now, the image, of the livestock sector, which has been significantly degraded, over the last few years. And clearly, farmers see that, I'm pretty sure, as a way to improve, their sector, the image of the sector, and also the competitiveness of the sector. So, in my view, the strategic plan, will be it will not be the only contribution and the only way to support farmers to change, but it will be a key driver for that. And I have to say, and I would like to clarify one element, is that what I have mentioned in my brief presentation, and I'm sorry if I went a bit too fast, but this is, I think, our assessment of the proposed strategic plan by the member states. Now we are entering into a phase where we are going to discuss with member states in order to improve, clarify, justify, increase the level of support, introduce new measures, etc. So we are going to ask member states to improve the strategic plan so that, at the end of this process, we do expect, and this is our role, I think, as a European institution, we do expect, I think, the national strategic plan to be much more ambitious into different areas, including in the area of animal welfare. But to be clear, if we look at the budgetary allocation already now under eco schemes, an eco scheme can be sufficient, contrary to what has been said. Under eco scheme and the second pillar, we have already more than doubled, I think, the budgetary allocation, budgetary support, I think, already to farmers. And we expect that in the discussion with member states, we will increase, I think, both the level of budgetary support and the effectiveness and the ambition, I think, of this support. So clearly, I think farmers, I think we need to take, I think, their situation into account and really support them in this endeavor. This is at least, I think, how we see it in the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you for this complementary information. So it's clear we need more rules, clearer rules. We need financial support for the farmers, and we need guidance and advisory. And I completely know, Monsieur Bascu, that the work for the Commission is huge now, because the strategic plans, as far as I remember, are between 400 and even more than 1,000 pages per strategic plan. So that's a huge work, but it's important, like Andrea said, that it is not now good if they add just 1 or 2 sentences. So, and then afterwards comes also the implementation of what they intend to do better now regarding animal welfare. I have already 3-4 persons that want to have the floor. I start with Caroline Rose, please, you have the floor, and then Pascal, Anya, and Maria Neuschel.
Merci Tilly, et je voulais remercier les deux orateurs pour.
Thank you very much, and I wanted to thank both speakers for your presentations. I am part of those who are somewhat sceptical when it comes to the capacity of the CAP to bring necessary change. I think there are a lot of elements at play here with regards to the strategic plans, and I hope the Commission will follow up on this. Now, you've talked about the tail docking for the pigs, the end of the cages. I'll come back to that in a moment. So the time frame for the Commission, if it's respected, it should be under this programming period that we see a phasing out of cages. We have asked for support for farmers. I wonder if some member states have already integrated this into their strategic plans. You said you've already received 19 strategic plans. Mr. Andreas, you talked about France, my country. Yes, France is certainly an example of greenwashing when it comes to the CAP. Practices are labelled sustainable, which are not. There's also a risk of animal washing, I think. I think in the end, the CAP could end up subsidising intensive forms of agriculture. You say member states need to be encouraged to act. When it came to the live transport of animals, with the recommendations there, we addressed ourselves to my Minister of Education, no response. We went to the ministry where we were not received, then finally we were received. But I still do not have a real response there. So yes, we certainly do need to exert pressure on our member states. But it's a voluntary action for the member states rather than compulsory at the moment, which I think is a real shame. I think they should be obliged to respect animal welfare. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup, Caroline. Et si on ne reçoit pas de réponse, c'est important aussi de...
Thank you very much. I think if we don't receive a response, it's important to say that to citizens. I'll take another 2 speakers, and then I will let our experts respond.
To English, Pascal Durand, please. And then Anya.
Pour reprendre le français tout de suite, Thierry. C'était un switch.
Well, right back to French then. I first wanted to react to the first comments we heard. I think we need to move beyond the well-being of animals and the well-being of farmers. It's something that we need to be able to integrate. We need to try and have the means where we can help farmers who are looking at implementing better practices. I think that's our role, and it should be the role of the CAP as well. I think it's can be described as a transitional CAP. It's clearly still insufficient for the moment. And it seems national plans are even less effective when it comes to animal welfare. Now, this is something that's being raised in France. Caroline is absolutely right to raise this. Obviously, Caroline and myself know this better than most countries. I imagine in other countries, though, the situation is similar too. So this is something we have to deal with. That's the question I wanted to ask. Of course, we need to try and put pressure on the member states. But if, as in France, the Minister of the Agriculture only seems to hear things that come from one side, and that's the agro industry, which carries a lot of weight in France. So if that's the only views that the minister is hearing, it makes it very difficult to change things. So the question I wanted to ask is, in your opinion, is there a possibility to help farmers who are trying to move beyond an industrial model that is so detrimental to animal welfare, the exploitation of animals, to put it quite frankly? Do we have a way to help in parallel industrial farmers or more traditional farmers? Can we provide that kind of assistance? I would be interested to know your response on this. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup à toi, Pascal. We take a
Thank you very much, Pascal.
member of the parliament, Anja Hazekamp, please, and then we come back, and then I take the next questions.
Yes, thank you, Tilly. Yes, I want to thank both speakers here today for all the work they did, especially Andreas studying all these strategic plans. Hats off for that. It is. I only studied the Dutch plan, and well, as you know, we have a very intensive farming model in the Netherlands. We are the second largest exporter of agricultural products in the world, which is ridiculous for such a small country. And our government promised last year that they will decrease the number of farm animals in the Netherlands with 30%. That is not enough to comply with all the nitrogen, with, for instance, the nitrogen directive. It is not enough to improve animal welfare either. In these plans, there are only 1 or 2 sentences about animal welfare, and they are, for instance, when they say something about ending the cage age, they say, we will think about ending the cage age. We will follow the proposals from the European Commission with great interest. But there is no action plan, no deadlines, nothing. So I didn't look into this plan in as much detail as you did, probably. But do you agree that the Netherlands, the Dutch plan, is lacking commitment? And you told us that eco schemes are not enough, for instance, to improve animal welfare alone. What can we do to improve these national strategic plans besides clear guidelines and really strong animal welfare legislation on European level? Do you have some ideas there?
Okay, I don't know who wants to react first. Maybe Andreas Manz, I give you the floor first to react to the remarks and questions of Caroline Rose, Pascal Durand, and Anja Hösenkamp.
Yeah, thank you very much. There was a question, is there a chance to have traditional farming, because it's always changing. There is no, future. No, how should the future look like? Let's make it like this. Europe must find a way away from the export orientation. And to be honest, the first point I saw was the idea to get higher self-sufficiency, oh my God, sorry, with the Luxembourg idea to ensure that you have less animals and you can feed them on your own pastures. This is something, I believe. But the thing is, a farmer who respects not only the law, but on top of that, ensures higher animal welfare, as long as he has to compete against high-intensive farming methods, which is the most creative way to produce for less money, as long as that will be rather tricky, to be honest. So we need an idea. And to be honest, we have now the Commission who says we want to have a green transition. Animal welfare needs to be part of the green transition. We always need to think, how should animal welfare look like? And not only think about which tools did we use the last 20 years, let's use them again, because then there will now be a different outcome. Regarding the Dutch plan, it is tricky to always evaluate without knowledge on the turf how good certain measures are. But you are right, the term animal welfare is sparely used in the plan. Let's say it like this. And how can we use it? Unfortunately, we need political will. There's no way around it. And therefore, I can just tell you, you are on one part. Use all the leverage you have, and the rest needs to be done by the member states and the Commission.
Monsieur Bascou, est-ce que vous voulez réagir aussi à...
Mr. Basco, did you want to take the floor on any of the points that were raised?
Non. Oui?
Si.
Ah, très bien. Très bien.
Je commencerai par les questions qui m'ont été posées par mes compatriotes.
I'll start with the questions raised by my fellow countrymen with regards to the legislative proposal linked to the European Citizens Initiative on the end of cages. The Commission announced last year that it would start a public consultation, which was done, that it would carry out a impact assessment during 2022, which is ongoing. And then there would be a legislative proposal on the end of cages in certain sectors with a transitional period, and that would be announced in 2023 under the framework of the revision of animal welfare legislation. So if all goes according to plan, and it is for the moment in 2023, the Commission will table a proposal to modify its legislation in the area of animal welfare, and that will be looking at the use of cages in the agricultural sector. Now, will this have a direct impact on the CAP strategic plans? Well, that will depend on the rate of discussions and the final package adopted by the European Parliament and Council. So next year we have the Commission proposal that will be tabled, and then it will be up to the co-legislators, one of which is you, of course, to discuss, to negotiate, to decide what will happen with this new legislation on animal welfare. If within the framework of that discussion, new legislation is decided to be implemented in 2025 or 2026, in 2024, this would already have an impact on the national strategic plans, and they would need to be adjusted to take into account this new legal framework for animal welfare. So that's a first response. And with regards to the second question on the agro-environmental transition and moving towards a more sustainable form of agriculture, a more resilient form of agriculture, which is still competitive, yes, it's clear that the current CAP that will be implemented from 2023 based on national strategic plans, this clearly has a key role to play, but it will not be alone. There will be other initiatives needed in the area of animal welfare, environment legislation, climate legislation, initiatives linked to the health of consumers, the choice of consumers. There's a lot of discussion at the moment together with our colleagues in DG Santé looking at these issues, looking at labelling with regards to animal welfare. So it's clear that the CAP cannot cover all of these aspects, but they will have a key role when it comes to the implementation of this legislation and providing support for putting this into practice. It's clear more needs to be produced in the medium term, but we need to produce better with less inputs, and so we need to provide financial support to farmers. You raised the issue as to whether animal welfare is referenced in all the national strategic plans. Well, it's important not to forget that you can improve animal welfare through other measures, so supporting organic farming, for example, aid for innovation, or modifying or improving conditions for infrastructure, buildings, in certain areas, in certain regions. So there doesn't necessarily have to be an animal welfare labelling. And what I mentioned, the figures in the first pillar, 1.1 million in the first, 2.8 billion in the second, this is one aspect, and there will also be other significant financing through other instruments. Now, is there a role for both of these systems? You talked about intensive agriculture and more traditional agriculture. I think, well, at least this is my personal opinion, that yes, there is a role for both of these types of production, as long as both of these types of production systems fully respect European legislation in terms of environment, climate, and animal welfare, and so on. So I don't think there is any need to have these two systems opposed to one another. It's important when a consumer goes to buy meat, for example, they are aware of the origin, the conditions of production of the product that they are buying. And of course, that the legislation and requirements are respected in terms of environment, climate, and animal welfare. And then my final point, what can be done to improve national strategic plans? This was an issue that was raised by the Dutch colleague. The strategic plans are a very powerful tool. They give the possibility to member states to define a strategy over the medium term, which is something that we didn't have before, based on an identification of needs. So I think what's important for us is that based on the needs that we have identified, and in terms of improving animal welfare, that's really a key objective for us. So we want to ensure that the necessary resources are being used and that the measures being proposed are sufficiently efficient, effective in order to achieve these objectives. So all of these aspects are important. We should not forget that they are all linked as well. We have economic objectives, environmental objectives, climate change objectives, animal welfare objectives, socio-economic development objectives for rural areas. if we can improve our environment and climate performance for certain types of livestock farming, I think that is really going to be closely linked to animal welfare, and we would hope that would also lead to a better level of income for farmers and maintain jobs in the farming sector. So rather than siloing off all these different objectives, I think it's important to have an overall vision of what we're trying to do here. We want to improve sustainability in general, the environmental, economic and social pillars of the system. So for us, that is absolutely key. We've spoken about France, we've spoken about Netherlands. There are letters that have been sent to these countries between 40 and 60 pages long with a certain number of requirements, some more strongly worded than others, some more technical adjustments. But it's clear that the months ahead will be key, because this will allow us to improve the proposals that have been put to the Commission, to make sure that we have strategic plans that really respond to the need of farmers and to the needs of society with these economic, social and environmental aspects. Thank you very much.
For vous, and for the last question, I give the floor to Maria Neuschel. Last remarks and question, please.
Ganz herzlichen Dank. Herzlichen Dank von meiner Seite und vor allen Dingen Dank an die beiden.
Thank you very much from my side. Thank you very much to both of the speakers. I would have a question to the Commission representative. We had a problem in the Agriculture Committee. I'm still very angry about the vote and the way things went in the Agri Committee, but I would be interested to know, in DG Agri, do you now have a feeling that we, because of the war that we have, because of the issues of food security, does that change things? And then from Mr. Mann's side, what 3 points do you think are best enshrined in the different member states? So best practices that then could possibly be replicated. So we are often making very small changes. It's just putting a plaster over the situation without really changing things. So I would be interested, is there a few real highlights you could identify in the strategic plans where you could say, yes, farmers are really doing something good here? That would be quite helpful. Thank you.
Vielmals für diese sehr pertinenten Fragen. Und
Thank you very much for those very pertinent questions.
to Bascu. Also, the interpreters have to run at 11:05. I think they give us 5 more minutes, and me too then. Monsieur Bascu, je vous laisse réagir à la première.
I'd like to ask you to respond to the first question from Neuschel, then I'll give the floor back to Andreas.
Interpreters for my switching.
Okay, thank you very much, and I will try to be brief. Yeah, clearly, I think the war in Ukraine has really changed, I think, as you know, I think the context, I think the geopolitical context, and it is clear that I think now we have to face, I think, some short-term, emergencies in relation to food security globally, in relation to the impact, I think, of these instability in the eastern part of Europe, I think, on the energy sector, on the food sector, etc., etc. So clearly, we have to take this into account, and this is why I think we have asked member states, I think, to review part and to take into account, I think, this element, I think, in the revision of a strategic plan. But clearly, and there I want to be strong and clear. I think for us, I think this does not change, I think, the long-term orientation to improve, I think, the resilience, I think, of the farming sector, to improve the sustainability of the farming sector. The war in Ukraine, unfortunately, hasn't changed, I think, the climate crisis that we are living, the biodiversity crisis, the need, I think, to improve the production system in the EU. So clearly, I think we need to take all these things into account, but the long-term orientation is there. We need to reduce our dependence on imported inputs, energy, feed, fertilizers, etc. So the long-term policy orientation, I think, is maintained towards, I think, resilience and sustainability, even if in the short term, yes, I think there's some short-term emergency, but we need to take into account, and this is why member states will be asked to adjust, to take this into account, I think, for the first few years of the implementation of the strategic plan. Thank you.
Merci encore beaucoup à vous.
Thank you very much indeed to you once again. That was very clear. Andreas Manz?
Wenn deutsche MEP fragt, werde ich natürlich in Deutsch antworten.
If I have a question in German, then of course I will reply in German. Well, we have quite a lot of differences in the member states, so it's quite hard to say there's 1, 2 or 3 measures that are useful, but I can make our analysis available for the Intergroup so you have a bit more information about the different member states. Thank you.
Vielen Dank, Andreas. Thank you very much to all of you. So we see some hope, especially with the things to come. If we have to be coherent to the farm to fork strategy, if we have to be coherent to the element welfare legislation, then definitely the common agricultural policy has to change. So I'm a little bit afraid when Mr. Bascu said we have to maintain the system. No. I think we have to change the system with all the stakeholders, yes, but we have definitely to change our food supply chain and therefore also agriculture with all the stakeholders. And let me make a last remark. Even if I'm happy that Luxembourg is the country that speaks about reducing livestock, I'm very shocked that Luxembourg is the only country speaking about that. So that makes me afraid, and that is more shocking for me than the positive point that my little country tries to give an example there. But let me come to the conclusion. Thank you very much again, Andreas. You are also so welcoming here, and you're doing a great job. Thank you very much also to Monsieur Bascu. Also, you are doing a very good job on your side, and for having been with us for this time, and also for your remarks and presentation. The next Animal Welfare Intergroup will be held on the 5th of May, but we are also going to have in May an Animal Welfare Intergroup with our Commissioner, Mr. Wyszczowski. It's going to take place in May, but yet we don't know if it's going to be in Strasbourg, then probably very close to the 5th May. But we try, the Commissioner would like to have it in Brussels, and then it is probably in the second half of May that we're going to have this exchange with Mr. Wyszczowski. But the next normal, if I may say so, Animal Welfare Intergroup is going to discuss a subject close to this one, the European Investment Bank funding for intensive animal agriculture and the EU commitment to fight climate change and to fight biodiversity loss. So we are going to analyze where is the funding of the EIB going, and is it really coherent to those strategies I mentioned already today. Voila, I wish you all a very good day. Thank you for being with us online and here in the room. It was great seeing you in 3 dimensions back. And thank you to the great team of the Animal Eurogroup also. Vous voulez ajouter quelque chose?
Want to add something? I'm sorry.
Just a misunderstanding. I think you said that we don't need to change the system. No, I would like to insist. I think there's a misunderstanding. We need to change the system, and this is where I think the CAP and the Farm to Fork strategy, I think, will make a difference, and we are convinced about that.
We take you by the word.
Sorry. Yeah, no.
I'm happy you say that, but yeah, okay, very good. You rectify that. Thank you very much, Monsieur Bascu.